Adonai panav elecha ve'asem lecha
Hi, everyone. We are back. And this is the donkey, Curtis Reid, and we've got a very, very special guest with us today. So we're going to be doing Torah Made Flesh, the Return. And I'm going to be the actual host today. So, but don't freak out. I'm not the new host of Torah Made Flesh. But given the nature of our guest today, you're going to be stuck with me as the host. So I'm going to be on the other side of the equation that I normally am when I come on the program. But it is a great honor to host, and it is a great honor to have this guest, who's a very special brother of mine, Mr. Daniel Hatt. Say hi, Dan.
Hello.
Well, we've been off the air a while, Daniel. Torah Made Flesh has been off the air.
Yes, it has. Yep. I think it was, September. The last show we did was the September show. Was that the one?
Yeah.
Right around there? Yeah. Well, I was had a whole lot of work going on and had to get some stuff done, and we had some other things come up. So, but we're back.
Well, you've for people who don't know, your absence with the program and everything else was for very serious and sobering reasons. And for people who don't know, who are watching the program, in October of 2017, following the Feast of Sukkot, at the end of the Feast of Sukkot on Friday the 13th, Daniel arrived home with his family and experienced a terror and a horror that you wouldn't wish on anyone. And that was a very, very serious night. And Daniel lost the love of his life that night, Shonda. And I remember receiving the news of this. We were actually just finishing our Sukkot in New Zealand. And I remember receiving that call. And I'm going to reflect a little bit on that when we get into a bit of the interview. But I think people need to have an understanding of just perhaps what fire can really be in people's lives. I sometimes say there's fire and then there's fire. And Daniel, you have experienced something that I've had the honor to walk with closely with you since the incident. We've had many a night of some very serious and intimate fellowship, for which I believe I have shared in some of the oil of your crushing as a result. And so we're going to talk a little bit about sharing one another's burdens based in Galatians 6. When we talk about fire, it brings to me the scripture, Daniel, and with your permission, I kind of like to base the program around sort of in Matthew 7:14, where it talks about, because the strait and the gate is narrow, the way in which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. And the actual word there used in the Greek is thlibo, and it actually means, we think of narrow as, sort of this tight little space, but actually the word being there used, it renders, is actually crushing, squeezed. And so it's more than just like a narrow space, it's actually this crushing. And of course, when we think of to enter into our crushing is slightly different connotations in the modern English, in a lot of ways. And so I kind of want to just raise that and to look at this whole area of crushing and how serious fires are. I have to admit, I'm not sure if I'd walk through a fire of this nature or the seriousness of it, given the type of nature of what it was. And so, there's the one who goes through it, and then there's those brothers in your life that shared, in your burden through this, and then where you are right now to today. So, without me saying much more than that, I'd kind of like to, let you speak to the people and just sort of, how have you been these past 4 months, and and share a little bit about your journey, and maybe open up some dialogue from there, because I know there's a lot of people who have been praying for you, who have missed you, who have been there. I know people have asked me, I get it almost every day. How's Daniel? How's Daniel? And people I know here in New Zealand in the fellowship here, were very excited to find out that Torah Made Flesh was actually coming back on stream. So that's why we've titled the program today, The Return. Torah Made Flesh. So anyway, over to you, my friend, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah. First of all, I do want to thank everybody that has been praying for me and my family. And, I can't even describe the feeling it was to have people reach out that I do know, but the amount of people that reached out that I have no idea who they are. It's a very incredible feeling to know that with all the things going on in the world, that a lot of brothers and sisters reached out with cards, with, whatever, cards, Facebook Live, messages, all these things telling us that they're praying for us and that my family's in their prayers. And that's a big thing. I mean, that's for me. There's nothing on the planet, I think, that's more important than when somebody tells you that they're praying for you, and they mean it. I don't even know how to describe the feeling, because there's no way I could ever thank that many people, other than doing something like this. And hopefully everyone who reached out or thought about us or prayed about us, whether they reached out or not, I just want to say thank you, because there's no doubt in my mind that the Father didn't hear you, because he's provided a level of shalom that is hard for me to comprehend in this whole thing, because it's kept me from being totally off of the reservation per se. I don't even know where to start. It's a very incredible feeling to have this kind of shalom, because even with all the pain and the hurt and everything going on between, the discipleship that we've shared together, and that it's been bearable. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but it's been bearable. And my kids, they're very resilient. They're built a lot like their mom, actually, when it comes to that. And it's almost like there's a special thing that the Father's allowed for them to experience that I don't even know how to comprehend it, because they're in a place where, yeah, it still hurts, and yeah, they miss their mom, and yeah, all this terrible stuff happened, and they've had to experience, the court thing and all this, and the fact that, like, my son just spent his first birthday and he's turned 14 in 14 years without his mom. But there's just a certain thing the Father's allowed him to have. I can't explain it. I just know it's from him, because they're functioning, they're doing well. I wouldn't say it's almost like normal, but it's probably about as close to normal as I could ask for right now. So yeah, kind of babbling on there a little bit about that, but yeah, I want to tell people thank you, because there's no way I could ever, repay that, because it's so powerful, for however long the Father hearing my name and my family's name from so many different people. I can't even, there's nothing else on the planet that can, even measure up to that in my book. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, when you hear something like what happened to you and the family, Deshaun, when you receive news like that, the ability to process it is really, really not easy. From the receiver end, never mind, I mean, to live it and go through it from your end is beyond comprehension. I mean, you're the one who did. So you're the only one who will know that true place with you and the family and the Father and everything like that. But I know the shock it was to so many here. I just finished doing baptisms with a number of the people at the appointed time here on the New Zealand end, and just literally had finished. And I was walking out of where we were doing the area where we were doing the baptisms, and Pip came up to me, and she was white as a ghost. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. You just can't believe it. And I remember sitting there trying to process what I was hearing, questioning her. What are you talking about? This cognitive dissonance is going on in your brain. And I had Brad Scott over here at the time, and he was back at the cabin that we were staying in together, and he wasn't aware of the news, and I came in, and by that time, things were just hitting me, and I remember being angry. I was angry. And Brad didn't know what was going on. I think I just told him what it was, or however it was. I don't even know how I remember it, but I just remember getting back, and poor Brad was in the cabin, and I was outside, and there was this bench. And I just smashed it. I just kicked it over, and I was just furious. I've got all these other people, hundreds of other people here. Nobody knows what's really going on and doing this. And I'm sitting there going, I gotta get myself together here, because there's a whole bunch of people that I need to share some news with. And yet I was fighting. Not being angry with Yah or being, I just, inside, I guess my hurt, my grief, for you was just, it just, I don't know. I remember feeling this extreme thing, how I couldn't be with you, and it made me angry. I couldn't, here I am stuck in New Zealand, at an appointed time, and I just couldn't be there, and I got angry. It just made me angry. And I think I was, nothing about it, it was just so difficult to process. And so anyway, so the news for so many people, because you had just finished up at Sukkot.
Just got back, literally just pulled in the driveway.
Yeah. And I think there's some things that I want to share, ask you a few questions about, so that we can just give a bit of context now from you, Daniel. Do you know what I mean? Because, people hear things and people ask questions, and, you and I were going through some very serious fellowship and discipleship together as a result. And, those are intimate times, which are not, that's not for people.
Sure.
who you're walking with closely. And I know some other brothers played a very close role in that. I know Steve played an incredible part, and what Steve Bergson did, and he got to you and was, facilitating things, and I know how it was hurting him, and of course everything he was dealing with back with the MTOI family you'd just come from.
Yep. Just left them, 5.5 hours earlier or whatever, but we had left, we stayed over for that extra night, and I think it was a Friday morning, and we were all out there, not all, but a big portion of us that there at the end finished loading up and helping get all the stuff ready for them to take back to Chattanooga area or where they store it and all that stuff. And we was all just sitting out there and, said our goodbyes and everything. And then a few of the families were like, well, on our way back, why don't we stop and eat or whatever? Cause it was getting dinner, lunchtime or whatever. So we did that. And we got done doing that and headed home, and they actually had went back in and did Shabbat at Manny's house. And, they all got together and all that, and we come home, and, it was never in my wildest dreams would I have, 8 hours earlier, we was all hanging out just talking about Passover, and how excited my wife was for Passover, and, and everybody. And because, it's the feast. Everybody loves getting together and being with each other and sharing in what the Father has for us. And, and so.
Yeah. Well, with your permission, because there's been so many questions and things I wouldn't, talk about or divulge. And so, or even sometimes you don't even feel it's not your place to, even if I'm privy to the information and the knowledge. And so a part of, I guess why I'm hosting today is, to sort of allow you to kind of steer the ship a little bit here and, maybe ask you a few questions, and, you kind of lead it and take us where you want. But I guess one of my questions, would be to you is to sort of, you're coming back from this incredible time with, spiritual family and celebrating a Moedim, and like you say, the family's excited. And so you're in this, I would think would have been a very, very joyous place.
Oh, incredible. I mean, we were that, we had such an amazing time, and we always do, but it was just very amazing. It was, my wife had a blast. We had a blast. The kids had a blast. It was, it was an amazing time. We felt very blessed to be a part of that and be a part of what the Father's doing and bringing people back to understanding the feast and what it means to really follow him and what he wants us to be and how he wants us to, how he wants us to interact with him and his people. And as all I know is it was out of the feast we've been to, it was like number one, it was like, it really does get better each time type of thing. And it was kind of the pinnacle for us. So we was coming back off this amazing,
And this was with the family in Tennessee down in MTOI.
Yep, with MTOI, we was down there with all the brothers and sisters from there, and this was our third feast with them. It was actually our second Sukkot. So we did our first Sukkot in 2016, Passover 17, and then Sukkot, this last Sukkot in 17. So it was our third feast, second Sukkot, and just amazing. You get closer and closer to the people every time and build new relationships. And I mean, it's the very shadow picture of kind of what the kingdom looks like. It's like, that's it. And it's just amazing to see it, even on the fallen level that we're at, where we're at in this fallen world, that it's so amazing. And to see the love and just to get to know people and celebrate this thing that the Father's doing is just incredible. And what was really cool is we'd been talking about moving and being closer to him. And the first Sukkot we went, and I would joke around and say, like I would be ready to move anytime. It didn't matter to me, but the father would have to deal with my wife because she's been in a job for 20 years. I'm not the one to ever try to usurp and just be, because I'm the head of the household. And even though she would do it and I wouldn't want her to be miserable, but like, I would never ask her to leave her job that she didn't want to leave. You know what I mean? Because it's a blessing to us. She carried the insurance. She did everything. So long story short, we talked about it. She's like, oh, we're never leaving Evansville because she loves her job and she loves helping people. She's the EMT, and it's very amazing. Like, I'll get into it later, but what comes out of all that. But so I was like, no, I said, if we ever got a chance to move, it would have to be the father would have to work on her. There's no way I would ever do that. So it's funny because 6 months later, we show up to Passover and people are talking about it and talking about moving, and was like, well, have you guys thought about it? And I was like, well, you guys, I always make the joke. You guys, you know where I stand. And we got done with Passover and we had an amazing time that time. And I don't know, it was a couple of days after that or so, we was back home. My wife was at work actually, and she called me and she said, I wanted to tell you something that I did without asking or telling. I was like, well, what's up? She applied for a job in Tennessee. And she was like, I think I'm ready to move. And it was the most amazing thing because, I'd poke at her every once in a while or something, especially when we went down to visit and all that stuff. But the father had just moved in her life to where she wanted to be a part of whatever the father was doing, wherever that may be. Tennessee was just the place that we felt drawn to at the time. And so this is all going on. And leading up to Sukkot, my wife, as of right now, still too, I got about 60% of my house packed up. She had, after Passover, between Passover and Sukkot, she had been packing stuff and putting it in our storage shed and I got a building. She'd been storing stuff at the building. Got stuff actually in boxes in the house still. She was ready. She had told everybody at work what was going down, and she had already started training some folks because she fulfilled a few roles at the work. So she was training people to kind of step in and take over the jobs when she was there. She was working on getting her certification in Tennessee, get her license transferred and all that stuff. So then we come to Sukkot, and it's just almost like just another amazing time. Well, at the end of this Sukkot, Joanne, which is the older Rabbi Tom's wife, she takes care of all of the kind of the treats and the desserts and the things like that to do with the feast, because we always was cooking the food. So she handled all the sweets and all that stuff. Well, she had said something to my wife that she would like her to take over that role for her. And like it blew, because my wife loves to cook and she loves to do all that stuff. And it just absolutely floored her. Like she was so thrilled that Joanne had asked her, to do that, because she respected Joanne a lot. And, she was even asking Joanne, she was like, well, because she was like, you're going to have to show me how to make because Joanne always makes the challah bread, and it's very beautiful, and it's just awesome. It tastes great, and it's just elegant. And so she was like, she was like, well, you're still going to have to help me show it. And she was super stoked. And on the way home, I remember she had slept most of the way home to about an hour or so, getting close to the house. And then she was up, and she had already been like, she's a very organized person. She was already pinning stuff to like her Pinterest thing, Passover dishes and treats and things like that she would like to try to make. And I remember her telling me some stuff that she wanted to try to make and all this stuff, right? And there was a spot in there when we was talking back and forth that I had this overwhelming, and I had no idea what it was until obviously now, but I had this overwhelming sense, like it just come over me. I'm just driving, trying to listen to her, and she's telling me, and she's showing me some things on the phone, and she's like, oh, and I can, make this and that. And this thing come over me. It was as I was looking at her, and I remember this feeling that was like she made it. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to explain. It's not like, oh, she's saved. It was almost like the Creator saying, like, I got her. Does that make sense? Like she belongs to me. And I remember thinking, like, wow, she has it. Because she was never churched. And, when the tour thing started happening for me, and I was able to use her as kind of an icebreaker to a degree, because I could read her things and ask her questions, because she's totally outside the box. Other than the church she was a part of me with, she's unchurched, so I could ask her questions. I just want the simple answer stuff, So when it all started happening, she was on board 1,000%. Like, it wasn't that big a deal to start eating kosher. It wasn't that big a deal to try to do the Sabbath, to do the feast. And, we just worked through it as a team. But I remember sitting there thinking and feeling that and thinking, like, wow, like, she wants to spend the rest of her life doing the Creator's ways and trying to help people and try to, be a part of whatever he's doing, wherever he's doing it. And just so happened it was it was where we was at the feast and MTOI and all that stuff. And, like, it was the most overwhelming. And I remember smiling ear from ear. I didn't even realize it, right? Like, I'm smiling as she's saying this, and I'm having this feeling. And I remember, like, thinking, wow, I wonder what that was about. And literally probably 45 minutes later, she's gone. Like, gone. And I just couldn't even believe it. And it wasn't until probably the following week, like, after the all the stuff and the funeral and the showing and all the things, like, that I remembered that. And I was thinking, wow, it was almost like he was reassuring me that it's cool. Like, she's, no matter what, she's going to get to be in the kingdom type of thing. And it was I still, like, get choked up about it, because it's very so real. Because obviously for me, and especially being the head of the house, going, like, sitting on my back porch thinking them first couple of weeks, like, man, we should have studied together more. I should have tried to help her through different things. We've done Shabbat better. We should have done more. We should have done this, it's like, and then all these what if things. And then in the back of my mind, there's always that thing, like, is she going to be in the kingdom? And every time it seemed like that creeped up, like, I thought of that memory of that thing that I had with her in the car, and I'd freak out for a minute, and then I would just realize that had to be him reassuring me at that point in time, because obviously he knows what's going down. I don't. And at the time, I'm just thinking this is just this amazing, happy feeling that I'm just feeling for my wife, and because she's so excited about Pesach and doing the ways and being a part of the fellowship and
she was getting it at the heart level.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And she was, and she just
not just the clock ticking level.
That's it. It wasn't about going through the motions. It was about the love and what it really truly meant to try to follow his ways. And dude, it was just the most amazing. There's no words I could ever use to describe the feeling I had, but I had it. And, at the time, it was even amazing at the time. And I'm just like, wow. But now it's the one thing that when I think of, it's just like, that was to me like the last memory part, like all the other crap that went down, and even that 45 minutes or so between that and getting to home, don't even exist in my mind. Like it's that moment, like that, because it's not like I didn't get to say goodbye. It's not, a family member gets sick and you have a little bit of time to kind of make your peace with it and, apologize or whatever it is that you need to do with that person to make it right. Like I didn't have that. The only thing I got was this feeling that the Father allowed me to feel about her to reassure me that like she had it on the heart level. And I'm like, I get that. I didn't, I get that. And then I get a lot of regret because of, there's so many things that you sit around and think about that there's nothing I can ever do other than think about that moment and just think, man, like, the day I get to see her again, like it don't matter then because we're with the King and it has everything I messed up here has nothing to, it doesn't matter then. So, but it was epic, man. I don't know. I'm sure the Father's allowed people to feel that, but it's the one thing that's burned into my memory forever is that right there. Even overall, the crap that happened, the ugly stuff, that right there, and seeing her, like, dude, I can see it like I'm sitting there. And it's I'm very thankful for that because he didn't have to let me feel that.
No, it was like a gift.
Yeah, exactly what it was.
He knows what's coming, and you didn't. Neither did Sean and other kids.
Nope. No, she didn't. Which he was very merciful in everything because number one, he didn't allow anything to happen to my kids. He spared me, and he allowed her to be taken very quickly. No pain, no suffering. And, because she could have lived for 30 years as a vegetable or in some kind of state that she would have never, ever wanted to live in. And I would have never been able to, like, pull the switch, or unplug the machine. Or I could have never done it because I'm too selfish. Like there's no way. It's like, no, you're just going to have to live all jacked up. But he was very merciful because he knows how weak I am. And it's like, if he would have left it up to me, it's like, there's no way. I could have never chose that path. So, a lot of mercy was given by him in the whole thing. And I'm very grateful for that. And even, like that memory, I mean, he didn't have to let me have that, but he did. And I'm very, very thankful of it. So,
we talked about doing the program and things like that, and I kind of, we discussed that it might be a little bit difficult, to discuss certain things and to, share these things because, I know what we lived in our own fellowship, and through that, I got a sense of a glimpse of, the journey you were going through. But only the one who goes through that journey can truly know. But you allowed me to get as close as, one could try and get to, to understand. And I'm just, we'll speak a bit more of that later, maybe in part 2 of this program. But, there's anybody who's lost a loved one, be it a child, be it a spouse, be it a parent, there's no way to make these things easy. Our time here it's finite, and we don't know when any of our clocks are up. And, as Ecclesiastes, as the Kohelet, encourages us to remember to not lose sight of the day, every day, just day by day, and to rejoice in that, to give thanks to the Father, to cherish our loved ones, to do all these sorts of things. And, a lot of people have experienced loss of a loved one. What was very different for me to go through this with you, because I've experienced loss in a different way. The spouse, I've experienced, my mother passed away in front of me, and I've had somebody die in my arms. You experience these different ways of people exiting the time domain. But I've never experienced murder. That was something that my journey in life to date, I had not had a close, understanding or glimpse into, if that
Sure.
makes sense, and that was really, it's sort of really brought up, why that's even on the covenant, thou shalt not murder. It's not thou shalt not kill, it's
Yeah.
thou shalt not murder. And because you've got somebody playing Elohim essentially in that place, and you can see why it's really, and this is where we as a people need to have that on our hearts, because if not, we can end up with the tragedies.
I do believe it's very much a usurping thing, because you're sitting on the throne.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't matter what you think about someone or what that person's done to you or anything. Life does not belong to you, ever. It does not. That life does not belong to you to choose to do what you want with it. And I think that is a lot, because that's to extinguish someone's life in a murder, to me, is like, it's not like we, something happened and there was a fight and there was this and there was that. It was legitimately a premeditated thing. And it's like, you put yourself in the role of the creator. That's all there is to it. You choose. And it's like, when did he ever give us the power to choose in that way? He didn't.
He didn't. No, he didn't. You shared some things to me when you got, and I had people ask me questions. It's funny because we're in this fellowship and you're giving me, I don't know what details you didn't give me. I guess you'd be the only one that would know that, because it certainly didn't seem like you weren't giving me any, leaving anything out.
No, I shared the whole thing with what, everything pretty much step by step with you. It's just, yeah, and I haven't watched, to be honest, I haven't watched one news story as far as that surrounds that, because I had people tell me that they saw it in California, and I'm like, but I've also had people tell me what they heard, because they heard something and they're like, and I'm like, well, that didn't happen, or that didn't happen like that. Yeah. So obviously the media is the media. I don't, I'm not saying they have their own agenda, but I think we all know that there's a different agenda than just the truth, So yeah.
The way they spin things. I in some of the questions and things that people were asking, in fact, going through, especially, in the first 3 or 4 weeks, Daniel, and, we spent a little bit of time, together. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, because it's, some of the things that you were sharing, and, you're reflecting on, what was going through, you're processing this and these sorts of things, and I remember, some of the tears we shed, together. You know, it's it's something pretty special to, when someone lets you into their life, in that close place of pain. That's something I learned many years ago to treasure. The Father had taught me this, the true meaning of Galatians 6, to share in one another's burdens, thus fulfilling the law of Messiah. What is this law of Messiah? How does this heart circumcision thing work? And we generally tend to think, well, it's all about the fire just that we go through, not necessarily the honor it is to actually share in the fire that a brother's going through. And, I remember, when you were sharing and going through your pain, and, our prayers together, just praying for you, and Pip and I would be praying for you, and all of this sort of thing. But, I guess to a certain degree, there's some things that people don't ever need to know. But for something like this, and this is where I can only leave it up to you, you arrive home with your family, and I know what level we went through going through this, because you were processing every second of what was occurring. And then there's, what do you share, with people watching the program, so that they don't have a misunderstanding, or they don't take the media spin, or want to know, like what actually happened, that sort of a thing. And so, I guess all I can do is give it to you to sort of decide now what you share, because I know a lot of people have been blessed by Torah Made Flesh and what you had just started, basically, before this fire comes into your life. And those people, I know what I've received through the program, and I know what others have written to you, and the testimonies of the program is blessing them. And you're just getting going with this, and then boom, we're talking a fire. And not to diminish anybody's fires or anyone else's and their pain.
Not at all.
At all. But not a lot of people have experienced what you've experienced, quite frankly. They haven't experienced that type of loss. And so, so I guess really I leave it to you now, to sort of as to what actually went down, Mr. Daniel Hatt, and what you wish to share with people, because I have not talked about this in detail with people, because I just didn't feel it was my right to.
Sure. I understand. I don't mind sharing all of it. It don't, it is what it is. And it just, yeah. So first off, me and my wife have been together, just to put it in context, since I was 16 years old and she was 15. We've been together for last December, the 28th of December, we would have been together for 23 years. We actually were together 23 years. We met in August, but we didn't start kind of, going out till the 28th. And then we would have been married the 14th of December, 15 years. So we went out for, 7 years before we got married. So that would have been our 15th year anniversary, the 14th. And then December 1st, got a lot going on in December. December 1st is my birthday. And I turned 39 years old. We were together for 23 years. And that's the first birthday in 23 years that I spent without her since I was 16 years old. Turning 17. Well, just to give people in context, how long we've been together.
Daniel, just on that, I just want to give a disclaimer too, just so people understand this. And to anybody watching the program, Daniel and I have discussed whether we would share certain things from that evening. You know, what would be some of the components of this program. I'm not putting Daniel suddenly in a spot and on the spot here. He knows and understands that we were going to discuss this, and he wanted to. And so I just don't want anybody to think that I'm putting you in, you know, that you're
the donkey's forcing me.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the donkey just sideswiped him and just sucker punched him with this kind of a thing.
I just got a text message with the bus that backed over me, you know.
Yeah, that's right. You know.
No, we've totally discussed it, and you know, I still know it was my option, and I don't mind sharing, but that's cool. I'm glad you did say that, because I don't want people to feel that way either, because it's totally not that. But anyway, so in context, we've been together for 23 years. She was my one. The first night I met her for 5 minutes. I wasn't even interested. I was headed to another direction. Actually, me and the guy I was hanging out with was going somewhere else. But his girlfriend, which is Shauna's best friend, my wife's best friend, she wanted to introduce me to her friend. We met for 5 minutes. Well, after, I guess, I don't know if it was before we got married. I think it was after we got married, actually, because she brought it up and was talking about that night. And she says, you know, I told Misty, which Misty's her best friend. She told Misty, she says, you know, that night I met you, she says, I told her that I was going to marry you. I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. I said, you realize that I was totally distracted by going another direction. I met you because she asked me that. I said, she's like, I know. But I told Misty you was the one. And that floored me. It's like she married me, and I love her, and I loved her, and I fell in love with her. Because at first I didn't like her. She started kind of hanging out and coming around. It was kind of, I used to tell people she kind of stalked me a little bit, and which was kind of amusing to hear. And I was sharing this story. Matter of fact, I was sharing kind of our testimony to some people at Sukkot. And, you know, I was like talking about how she kind of stalked me and would show up some places at parties and stuff. It's like, you don't even go to my school. How are you even here? But I ended up, we became very good friends. And then I ended up asking her to go out. It's like, do you want to start dating? You're always around anyway. I might as well at least, you know, we might as well at least kind of be a thing, right? And so anyway, just a brief background, and we started dating and stuff. And then after a few years, we had went on a trip with her friend and her boyfriend at the time to Myrtle Beach. Had a great time, and we was walking back. We had walked down to kind of like the tourist trap areas where they have the games and the, you know, all this little shops and stuff. And we was walking back, started raining like cats and dogs. And I remember we was holding hands and just kind of, we was walking, we wasn't running. It was real nice out, so it was very warm in the rain. And I remember like literally falling in love with her, holding her hand, walking back to this hotel where we was staying. And just, it was, I'll never forget it. And I remember telling her that. I said, I'll never forget this walk for as long as I live, ever. Because I fell in love with her right then. So I bought her a ring, proposed to her, and we ended up not getting married right away. And we ended up moving in together, and, you know, and some things happened in my life to kind of start drawing me back towards the Father. And we ended up getting married. And so, you know, 15 years later, here we are. So we're coming back from Sukkot. I just want to give people a little bit of basic context, because I don't know what the media shared or, you know, anything. And I don't know, you know, there's a lot of people who don't know my relationship anyway. So we're coming back. I experienced the thing in the car with her. We're on our way back. My kids are in the back seat sleeping. And we get in town, and we get, you know, we do the same thing we normally do. And just so people know, I have 2 dogs, and because I have 2 dogs and I love them very dearly, they're like family. I have a friend of mine that he always house sits for us, watches our house and watches our dogs, feeds our dogs, and just hangs out at the house and he's been doing this for 4 or 5 years. Every year we go out of town. So when we go on feast, or if we went on a vacation to Florida, whatever, he does this. I've known this guy for 12 years. He works with me every day. Like he's my guy that works with me. Very good friends. So he watches our dogs and does all the stuff. Well, our routine is we normally pull up. We actually call him about 30 minutes out. So my wife called him like normal. We pull up and he usually helps us. He puts the dogs up and usually helps us get our stuff out of the car and does that. And then he has his stuff ready and we put it in the car and stuff and we talk for a minute and I usually run him home and that's it. I have a room in my bedroom. I keep locked all the time. Even while he's here, it stays locked. I have weapons in there. And we pulled up, backed up like I normally do, got out. My wife was the first one up the driveway. I had my truck and my trailer parked there, so I was kind of behind it. And because I backed in, I actually got out on the other side, which I was behind my truck and trailer. My kids got out and was following my wife up. She gets to about the front of my truck. My truck is, and she passes it, and I got a little stairway, and I got a fence back here. And then, anyway, so she gets up a little bit past there towards the stairway. I get in front of my truck, and the kids are right directly behind her, and we hear 3 gunshots. And we hear where we live, we hear gunshots. I'm not gonna say regular, but it's not uncommon for us to hear some stuff where I live. But it sounded, I remember hearing it and it sounded very close. And I remember, I knew it was a 9mm. It wasn't no other gun. It was a 9mm gun. And I heard it and I stopped and she stopped and she turned around and looked at me. She goes, "That was gunfire, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, and it sounded extremely close. Well, I told my kids, I said, "Look, you go get back in the car." Because I couldn't determine where it was coming from because it was coming from behind my house. I have a field behind my house, and sometimes people go out there and do whatever. So I didn't know what was going on. So I tell them to go to the car. As they turn around and start walking, my wife turns around. I said, "Come on, Shonda, get back, because I don't know what's going on." And I have a firearm with me in the car. I didn't actually have it on me at that time, but I have it sitting in the car. So I was going to go back and get it. She turned around, took one step. We heard 3 more shots, and she was down. And so I yelled at the kids. I just told them to run. I said, "Run down the street. I don't care where you run. Just run away. Just go. I'll find you in a little bit." So they booked off. And I ducked down behind my truck, and I hear, another couple thing, and I start pointing and yelling at my wife for her to move. I didn't know she was hit. I thought she might have heard the shots and ducked. So I'm yelling. She's not moving. So I run out there, and when I get out there, I kneel down, and she's laying there. Her eyes are closed, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to figure out where she was hit, because there's blood all over on the side and everything, and I can't figure out where she's hit. And I noticed blood coming out of her ear, and I knew then, I was like, she's hit the head. I just knew it. Well, as I'm sitting there, he's actually behind my fence up on my porch. I can't see him. It's all dark. He's about 15, 18 foot away. Well, he shoots at me 4 times while I'm kneeled down there and messing with her. And I remember hearing 4 shots, and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. And the only thing I remembered was I can't do nothing to her. I got to call the ambulance, the paramedics, and I need to make sure my kids are okay. And I need to move before I get hit. I remember thinking all that in whatever little amount of time was happening. So I'm looking at her. I hear this goes down. And I knew, there was just something inside of me. I was just I knew, right? And so I move, call the people, trying to get them. And I had got my handgun out, and I was kind of taking cover behind my thing. So, cause he keeps shooting, he's just shooting. And, cops show up, paramedics show up, they get my wife and they actually lay her. Like, and this whole time he's still shooting. He shot at the cops. He shot at the neighbors, whoever. He's still shooting. So this all goes down. They get my wife moved out of the way because he eventually had went back in the house. And they moved her, man, and they moved her. They moved her right in front of me. And I just don't even. I think I was so shocked. Like, I just remember thinking the only thing I could think of was to call people that I knew that would pray. That was the only thing I could think of. Like, that was it. So I called my friend Sean. I tried calling my friend Craig, and I tried calling another friend of mine, Jeremy. The people we just left, right? I'm trying to get a hold of them, and I couldn't get a hold of them. So then I call, Steve, and I call him, right? And when he answers the phone, he's kind of joking with me because it is Shabbat. And
this is Steve Berkson.
Yeah, Rabbi Steve Berkson. And I call him, right? And he makes a little wisecrack or something. Because, just like when me and you call, we clown around, whatever. And I told him, I said, hey, I said, could you start praying for Shonda and tell people to pray for Shonda? I said, she was just shot. And, like, I can't see him because I'm not on FaceTime, but I'm on the phone. And, like, there was this, like, overwhelming sense of just, like, I heard his heart fall. Like, he was just like, what? Like, this, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. Like, the comprehension level in his voice was like, what do you like? And all I could tell him was, like, I'll call you later. Because this cop, right, he kept yelling at me because I got to call my friends. And he's like, why do you got to call your friends? I said, I got to call my friends because they got to pray for my wife. And he's like, we ain't got time to do that right now. And I was like, no, I do got time to do that right now. I was like, it doesn't matter, what you got. Like, that's the most important thing to me right now is to call my friends to pray. I was like, because there ain't nobody on the face of this planet that can help her except the Father. And I was like, and it's just like, so I'm doing this, and he's kind of like chasing me down the street. And anyway, but before that, I forgot to mention, like, okay, I go after I leave her, right? I go back and I make the phone call. When I make the phone call to call the cops or call the ambulance, a neighbor of mine across the street, like, I look down and there's my daughter sitting by the van curled up, and a neighbor of mine come across the way. He had a weapon on him and he had her covered up, and he was like, I have a weapon and I got her covered, because one of the bullets had went through his window and almost hit him or his kid, or like, it, right directly across the street from my house. So I'm like, okay, there she is, and I don't see my son anywhere. So I start yelling. I got the dispatch on my phone, and I'm yelling for my son, and I don't hear him at all. Like, and I start freaking out, because instantly I was like, oh my God, he's on the other side of the van, hit, right? So I start yelling. Just so happened this lady yells back from down the street. She was like, hey, I have your son, and he's okay. And my heart, like, it already sunk, because I was just like, oh my God, he's and then, so my daughter's here, the lady down the street has my son, and then the cops show up and do the thing, what I talked about, where they brought my wife out, and then I'm on the phone trying to get people to pray, and they take me down the street about a half block down. I can see her, I can see the paramedics working on her. I just, I saw him get up and start walking back, and I saw another detective walking towards me, and I just knew what he was going to say. And he got close, and he was like, he goes, I think you know what I'm going to say. And it's like, yeah, I know. I know, I see her. I saw her when I went to check on her. I knew. So I'm standing there, and we get up, and I get the kids, and we walk back, and And this whole time, they're still trying to get my friend out of the house. And they eventually get him out. He comes out. He comes out, no weapons, no none. He just comes out and gives himself up. And me and my kids are standing there, and there's my, their mom, my wife, laying there, and the detective's like, well, we need to take you guys downtown. You guys need to do a statement. You need to do this. You need to do that. So we went and did that. And, my kids didn't even get to say goodbye. They didn't even at the very least, they didn't get to go over and, see her. They saw her from a distance and they knew. So we went down there and, they questioned us and all the regular police stuff. And I couldn't comprehend, I guess, what happened because he was my friend. Like, I was like, what? Like, what happened? Like, what happened? Like, I don't know.
This is a dimension that some people will not have an understanding and details of. Never mind the proceedings. And it brings in a whole other set and part of your journey in this testimony is this component.
Yeah.
And like I say, there's fires and then there's fires. And these kind of things they have all these different dimensions to them, and I think one of the things is, and I guess why Daniel, when we discussed doing the program, the saints overcome by their testimony and by his blood. And you wanted to give your testimony and to share a bit of this, not only to let people know the actual truth of what happened, but also so that you could give to others that are hurt or are in pain and, whatever their fires might be, because of so much of what the Father's done with you. And there was some miracles that happened that night that, we're going to talk about as well, because a lot of people don't realize that the fact I'm doing an interview with you right now is a miracle as well, that you're alive as well. And people don't know this. And so, look, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you a little bit of a rest there, buddy. If not, I think I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time continuing myself just to hear this. But let's end part one of the program here and give ourselves a bit of a break, a bit of a rest, and also the people watching and listening.
That sounds fun.
How's that? And hopefully people will get a sense of, where part two, not just the what, but now perhaps the why and some of the things that you and I have also seen come through all of this as well, which is ultimately where your heart was for you wanting to do the program and to get back up. And I know certainly with myself and to share a whole other dimension to this, but I think it is important that people no longer had any question as to what happened and, sort of what went down. And
absolutely.
I know there's going to be a lot of people that would have found just watching and listening to what you shared very difficult. I know there'll be many that will appreciate the courage and, the love that it is for you to share this. I have the privilege of knowing that you've wanted to give this to people, to help them. And no matter how difficult it was going to be, I have to say it's, even though we discussed the program, just reliving some of this stuff is not the easiest. So, and I guess I'm not the best of hosts either. I guess everybody will be happy when you and Trey are back in the seat.
You're doing fine.
But look, let's end part one of the program there, and let's have a bit of a break, hey? And then we'll come and we'll do part two to the program and share maybe another aspect to all of this, which hopefully is going to help people and see that our Father is good through all of this. It has been good through all of this and many other dimensions.
Absolutely.
So we'll sign off for now. And to everybody who's watching, don't worry, we'll be coming back with part two. And thank you for sharing in watching and hearing Daniel's testimony and all this. And because we know there's a lot of people that are hurting out there.
Absolutely.
And I know how much it has been on Daniel's heart as to why he wanted this program to be done. And so I want people to see that side of you, Daniel, as to why you really started Torah Made Flesh, and for people to really know why the Father is taking you on the journey, and your kids and the family, and what all of this is. And I know this past hour, like you say, where Shonda got things apart, and I know that she's being.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. There we go. I hear something.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
My apologies.
That's all right.
But I know she's been here through the program through you, and I know that just through other things, just how much she would agree with your decision to do the test. A little bit of testimony to share with people, just what happened, and how much she was behind Torah Made Flesh, and how much she was supporting this, and all of a sudden, just as you get started,
she's gone.
Yeah, and I know that you wanted people to know. So let's have our break, and we'll come back in part two, and hopefully people will join us for that and start hearing some other dimensions to all of this.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Okay. We'll sign it off there, and everybody will see you back hopefully for part two. Stay tuned. You're going to want to hear some of this. Anyway, so y'all bless, and we will see you in part two.
Shalom.
Shalom.